My partner waited 10 years for his ex to come back. When she did, he chose her over me. Now I'm living my best life without him. Oliver had a particular someone before he and I dated. Sophie, my best buddy. The cuteness of this duo made some roll their eyes. I was thrilled when they engaged. Sophie disappeared on their wedding day. No call, text, or explanation, just gone. Oliver was ruined. I stayed with him all month to prevent stupidity. Soon, our relationship changed. After 10 months we started dating and have been together since Sophie returned unexpectedly 3 nights ago. I didn't realize she was in town until Oliver was crazy all day. Forgotten, distracted, completely out of it. He'd overlook our plans. He'd check his phone during supper. He'd lose focus mid-sentence, which scared me. I eventually questioned him. Is everything okay? He looked at me with wide eyes and smiled after coming out of the bizarre trance. I'm fine, he flatly lied. Is it because Sophie's back in town? I mean, I heard from my mom, but I don't want to talk about her, he said. His stinging words made my heart leap. He'd never addressed me like that before. I said, Oliver, do you still love me? And fought back tears. His expression softened. He hugged me and agreed. He hugged me and said he loved me, but I knew he was just lying to himself. The night after, I realized his statements were true. We were scheduled to celebrate our 4-year anniversary. I arrived at the restaurant early after work and seated at our customary table. I ordered his favorite wine, placed my present on the table, and waited. I waited 2 hours, checking my phone every 3 minutes, terrified he was hurt. I got a text after 4 hours of waiting. Can't attend. Something happened. The end. Just 8 words. No call. But I knew his whereabouts. I drove to the park where the 3 of us used to hang out in college, near the lake where we'd speak till daylight, and saw them on the bench. Oliver gazed at her patiently. Something he never did in our 4-year relationship. I approached but hid behind the woods, hearing everything. I can't believe you're really here. Oliver sobbed. Sophie murmured. I'm so sorry for everything. Resting her hand on his gently. It was all moving so fast between us back then. I kept telling myself I was ready for marriage when I wasn't. So I ran. But all these years, Oliver, there was no one else on my mind but you. She softly put his palm to her lips. Oliver nodded and dropped his eyes. It just kind of happened. His words made my chest constrict. Just happened. We described everything as an accident. Do you love her? Sophie frankly inquired, addressing his gaze. Silence spread between them. Honestly, I don't know. I thought I did, but seeing you again, I'm not sure anymore, Sophie said. Is there still a chance for us? I knew he'd answer yes after 4 years if I tried again. I came out from behind the woods, approached them, and removed the promise ring he gave me last Christmas when he said he wanted a happy ending before he could respond. Dropped it in his hand. Wait, he shouted, but I kept walking, naively hoping he'd follow and stop me. His refusal told me all I needed to know. He never returned home that night, following night, or the night after. I put his belongings in boxes and placed them by the door, changed the locks, erased his number and did everything he never had the guts to do when Sophie left him years ago. 6 days later, he knocked. Through the peephole I saw him tired. Holding the ring he banged again. He said, "Can we talk?" Through the door. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please, can I come in just to talk? I stood with my hand on the doorknob. Part of me wanted to open it. Something in me wanted to hear his words. Part of me loved him anyhow. Just before I decided, Sophie texted me. Please hear him out. There's something you have to know. Something we never told you. I opened the door just enough to see him in the hallway light after unlocking it. Oliver looks bad. His hair looks like he's combed it for days. Red, swollen eyes. The collar of his wrinkled shirt is stained. Despite the scorching sensation, he can't let go of the promise ring. I check my phone again and read Sophie's message. The words still make no sense after 5 seconds. Oliver starts to speak, but I stop him. I tell him Sophie contacted me suggesting I learn something they never told me. His face turns white. Not pale or weary, but white like his skull had been emptied of blood. His shoulder meets the hallway wall as he steps back. He leans on it, fearing his legs may collapse. I see him try to speak, but nothing comes out. So he shuts his eyes and breathes deeply. When he opens them again, he looks at me and says, "We need to sit down because it's complicated and he should have told me years ago." I leave the doorway silently. He steps in hesitantly, doubting I'll let him remain. Out of habit, I shut the door after him. We go to the living room and I sit on the window chair, not the couch or anywhere near him. Oliver sits at the end of the couch, and we feel far apart. Still clutching the ring. His hands shake. Waiting for him to speak. The stillness lasts so long I can hear the kitchen clock ticking. Oliver speaks last, with a gruff, crying voice. He denies that Sophie departed their wedding day due to cold feet or commitment anxiety. 3 weeks before the wedding, she discovered her mother had early-onset Alzheimer's. Her father suppressed its severity for months. Oliver claims Sophie's mother didn't recognize her during the last dress fitting. Sophie showed her mom the finished garment at her parents' place, and she was treated like a stranger. I inquired her name and why she was in her residence. Sophie's father took her aside and revealed her mother had been growing sick for a year. He'd excuse her by saying she was sleepy or anxious. He felt humiliated and believed he could handle it alone. Oliver keeps talking, and I sit there trying to understand. He said Sophie's father implored her not to inform anybody about the illness. He wanted secrecy. He didn't want his wife treated differently. Sophie was scheduled to marry Oliver and move 4 states away for his new job, which he'd accepted, and the apartment they'd put a deposit on. But her mother was dying, crumbling. Sophie couldn't quit. She had to stay with her mother when she needed her. However, she couldn't decide between her lover and her dying mother. She fled without explanation. She disappeared on the wedding day because she couldn't pronounce the words. She didn't know how to shatter Oliver's heart as hers broke. Something shifts inside me as he says. My rage turns to uncertainty. My 4-year-old tale is entirely changed. I felt she was terrified, and left Oliver without considering the Sophie selfish consequences. But this is different. I don't know what to do with this impossible and dreadful situation. I ask Oliver why he never told me. Why he let me assume Sophie destroyed his heart without explanation. My voice sounds harsher than intended. Looks down at his hands, and the ring shines. He discovered the truth 7 months ago. 7 months. Half our relationship. Sophie eventually contacted Oliver after her father's stroke to apologize and explain why she fled. Oliver has carried this information since. Knowing Sophie didn't leave because she stopped loving him. Knowing she fled because she was drowning in an awful circumstance and couldn't beg for help. I see it in his eyes as he says, "This matters daily since he learned. He knows the truth about her and is with me every day. He claims he didn't inform me because he thought it didn't important. Sophie was gone and they were making something genuine. He believed he could hide the facts without consequence. I now see it influenced everything. His occasional zoning out. He'd grow silent when others mentioned weddings or sick parents, and he never appeared there even at our happiest moments. I question him directly if he's spoken to Sophie in the previous 7 months. Question lingers between us. Oliver pauses. A few seconds felt like eternity. He confesses they've sent a few emails concerning her mom's illness and dad's recuperation. Checking in. Nothing sexual or indecent, but those emails make me sick since he's been emotionally engaged with her all along. He's been thinking about her and worrying about her position, promising me a future, giving me the promise ring, and talking about our happy ending. Oliver's quicker speech must be a reaction to my look. He claims the emails were benign. He never intended to act on emotions. It seemed he had everything under control. Sophie returned to town to assist her father sell the house. He can't handle it alone after the stroke. She returned to manage the estate and appeared here. Not simply words on a screen, here. Her presence demolished Oliver's barriers. Every manner he'd told himself he was over her. He's been a mess trying to reconcile his feelings with his expectations. Thinking about if what we have is real, or whether he's simply using me as a safe spot to bury his unresolved feelings. As he speaks, I understand he's lied to us and possibly himself. No longer able to sit, I rise up. He must leave, I say. He's looking desperate and guilty, so I need time to consider. Oliver argues. He suggests we chat more and work through this, but I'm firm. The boxes I packed are beside the door. I say take what he needs and leave. He sits for another minute, deciding whether to push back. Eventually, he stands and goes out. He takes his keys off the rack and opens a box for clothing. He promises to spend a few days with Max. Allow me room. Then we can speak. Not responding. He gathers his stuff and leaves as I watch. It closes behind him, and I turn the lock and stand in the quiet apartment. Kitchen clock ticks on. The fridge hums. Streetcars pass by outside. I return to the living room and sit on Oliver's couch. The pillow is still warm from him. I glance around our shared apartment and realize I don't know who I'm mad at. Sophie for leaving, Oliver for lying, myself for not recognizing it sooner, and us for creating this mess. Probably an hour, I stare at nothing on the couch. His absence makes the apartment uncomfortably quiet. Scrolling through old images on my phone hurts my chest more. At 11:30, I know I won't sleep and contact Emily. She answers on the second ring, sounds half sleepy but wakes up quickly when I call. Tonight I tell her about Oliver's emails with Sophie, falsehoods, and how he stated he doesn't know what he feels. Emily listens without interrupting and is silent when I finish. My stomach drops when she says anything. She says I may have loved saving Oliver more than loving him. I want to fight her and defend myself, but I know she's right and choke on the words. I wasted 4 years attempting to please someone who was never there. Emily talks to me until almost 2 a.m., leaving me exhausted but clearer. The next morning I'm fatigued and my eyes are swollen from crying. I prepare coffee and stare at my phone at the kitchen table. I know what to do. I open my messages and text Sophie. I tell her we must discuss face-to-face without Oliver. Within 5 minutes she agrees to meet me in a downtown coffee shop that afternoon. I pace the apartment all morning, practicing what to say to her. Practicing in the bathroom mirror feels like a presentation. However, seeing her will likely make me forget all I prepared. Driving to the coffee shop at 1:30, I arrive 15 minutes early. I order an unwelcome tea and sit by the window observing folks. Sophie does not look like I expected it to. She seems exhausted and older than Oliver's carefree college girl from his former social media. She has dark bags beneath her eyes and a disheveled bun. She approaches and I stand awkwardly, unsure if we should embrace or shake hands. She sits across from me and thanks me for meeting her. She apologizes for last night's SMS before I can respond. She claims she recognized it was cruel to drop the bomb without warning after mailing it. I nod and tell her why I wanted to chat. We order coffee and she tells me about the past 4 years. She describes her mother's early onset Alzheimer's and how she forgot everyone she loved. Sophie cries as she says her mom didn't recognize her. She describes quitting her job, residence and life to care for her full-time at home. She says her mom died 4 months ago and shattered her since she'd given up everything to care for her, including Oliver and their life together. Sophie claims she returned to town to give Oliver closure and an explanation for vanishing on their wedding day. However, seeing him in the park the other night brought back all the old sensations and scared her. She informed him she wanted to try again since it seemed right then. I listen and digest, attempting to decide how I feel. I conclude by asking her what she wants from Oliver now. Sophie glances at her coffee cup for a while. She then acknowledges ignorance. She swears she'll always love him, but she knows she harmed him and broke his trust. She says she's not sure if she wants to try again, or if she's lonely, mourning, and craving familiarity. Sophie says something that changes my mind. Oliver mentioned me in the park, she says. He said I was compassionate and gentle and helped him heal after his breakup. Sophie stares at me and says she could tell he cared about me, but she could also tell he'd never let go, which is unfair. After almost 3 hours, I realize Sophie isn't the evil I wanted her to be. She basically made a tough choice and handled it poorly, and everyone is suffering for it. Near the conclusion, she says she's moving back to her mom's hometown to settle the estate and start afresh without these memories. She wants to leave here. After saying farewell at the coffee shop, I feel emotionally weary, yet lighter. I drive home and enter my apartment to find Oliver has contacted me to chat again. After staring at the message, I put my phone face down on the counter. I ignore it because I need time to find out what I want instead than just following others. Emily delivers Thai takeaway from my favorite restaurant around 6 o'clock that night. She arrives, sets up the meal, and watches a lousy action movie without asking questions. We watch explosions and eat pad thai as I attempt to forget my mess. I work and come home for 3 days, ignoring Oliver's texts. Finally I meet him on day 4. I tell him to meet me at the park where everything went wrong. I arrive to see him nervously seated on the bench. When he sees me, he jumps up and apologizes, but I stop him. I tell him Sophie told me everything about her mom and why she left. I then directly question if he still loves her. Oliver struggles to respond and his expression shows he's struggling to think out what to say. Finally, he admits to not knowing his feelings. Seeing Sophie brought back all the pain and love from before, but being with me has been comfortable and safe. Comfortable hits me hard. I tell him I want more than comfort and safety. That I deserve someone who knows they desire me without hesitation. Oliver looks heartbroken but doesn't dispute since he knows I'm correct. Oliver and I get up from the bench, unsure of what to do. I suggest taking a true break, not just a few days of him living with someone else, to find out what we want independently. He looks at me and asks if we're splitting up. Honestly, I don't know yet, but I know I can't keep waiting around while he decides if I'm enough for him. My voice is clear despite my constricted chest. Oliver strokes his hair and nods gently. We agree to let him stay with Max for 3 weeks without talking. No texts, calls, or intentional encounters. He wants to hug me farewell. I shake my head because if he touches me now, I may change my mind about everything. I walk alone to my car and turn off the radio to drive home. Just sitting in quiet processing what transpired. The flat is too quiet when I arrive, so I phone Emily to come over. She arrives an hour later with champagne and ice cream without questioning. Stays on the couch with me as I weep. The next week at work is terrible since I'm upset and can't focus for more than 5 minutes. I forget half my slides and ruin a client presentation. Helen observes when I zone out at a team meeting when someone is talking to me. A frank 50-year-old divorcee, she doesn't take bullshit. She interrupts me making coffee in the break room after the meeting. She stands between me and the door and asks what's wrong since I've been zombie-like for days. I attempt to blame it on fatigue, but Helen crosses her arms and says she doesn't believe me. She breaks me down with her directness, and I tell her everything about Oliver and Sophie, the park, and the separation. She listens without interrupting or criticizing, nodding sometimes as I tell my complicated story. She's silent when I finish. She recounts her first marriage to a man still obsessed with his ex-wife. Helen claims she spent 5 years preparing his favorite dishes, supporting his profession, and being patient while he worked through his issues. But she was competing with a ghost who had a pristine recall of someone who was gone. She recognized that she was competing against a concept, not a person, and could never win. Helen looks me in the eye and says, "The kindest thing I can do for myself is walk away and let Oliver figure out his mess without me waiting in the wings like some backup option." I know her words are real, and they sting. She squeezes my shoulder and tells me I deserve someone who picks me first, not someone who loses everyone else before appreciating what he has. I return to my work feeling raw, but lighter, like someone finally let me put myself first. I focus on work to forget Oliver as the days pass slowly. I don't know if he's thinking about me, Sophie, or everything. Max texts me to grab coffee 3 weeks after we broke up. I'm surprised he's reaching out since Max was Oliver's college friend before I met him, but I agree to see him the next day at a cafe near my workplace. Max is already sitting at a corner table, looking uncomfortable when I arrive. He rises up when he sees me and we awkwardly debate hugging. After ordering coffee, Max just brings it out. He says Oliver failed miserably. Lacking food and sleep, he stares at his phone for hours, unsure who to contact. Max says Oliver has been on his sofa for 3 weeks, and it's painful to see him come apart. Nodding and waiting for him to continue is all I can do. Max is upset with Oliver since he's seen him squander years in the past and present, never committing to anybody. He says Oliver is immobilized because he's afraid of making the incorrect choice and being alone, therefore he's never honest with himself. Max adds, "I deserve better than being someone's backup plan, even if Oliver doesn't consciously see it that way." It's like Helen told me, and I feel it in my chest. I ask Max if Oliver still loves Sophie. He sighs and covers his face before responding. He believes Oliver still loves Sophie, but he also believes Oliver has actual feelings for me that became twisted with gratitude and dread of being alone when she left. Max advises Oliver to select what he wants, not what feels secure or what he should desire. He apologizes for being forthright but believes there must be honesty about this circumstance. After coffee, Max hugs me and tells me to take care of myself no matter what Oliver does. I drive home feeling tranquil, like everything are finally falling into place, even though nothing is settled. Sophie's name appears on my phone that night. My pulse races since we haven't talked since that coffee shop discussion weeks ago. When I respond, she seems scared and speaks rapidly, terrified I'll hang up. In 3 days she's leaving town. She'll work in her mom's hometown to escape the memories, heartache, and convoluted past. Sophie wants to meet again before leaving to tell me something significant about her last talk with Oliver. Despite not wanting to hear what she has to say, I meet her the next morning. Another coffee shop across town is where we meet without history. Sophie enters and sits across from me, looking fatigued yet resolute. She orders tea and inhales before commencing. Oliver unexpectedly visited her dad's house 2 days ago, she says. He informed her he's been thinking about everything, and understands he's been unfair to us by hiding his sentiments. Oliver said Sophie he never stopped loving her, but he's formed a meaningful relationship with me, and is afraid of making the wrong choice and ruining someone. Sophie's eyes wet as she talks, and I can tell she struggles. She informed Oliver she's going because she can't let him hurt someone like she did 4 years ago. Sophie stated that she won't return to this city and that he should make his decision on our relationship. Not compared to what they had or could have. Hearing this makes me sad and relieved. Her departure brings relief, but she's unhappy it took so much grief. Sophie softly touches my hand across the table. She explicitly apologizes for the meltdown and the text that sparked it. She claims she now realizes I care about Oliver and supported him through his darkest time. Sophie wishes that whatever occurs between Oliver and me doesn't make me doubt my value or ability to love. I hear her voice crack and understand she means every word. We rise to go after finishing our drinks. Sophie hugs me tightly and we hold on longer than necessary. As we separate, I know I'll miss our companionship in a simpler time. I watch her walk to her car and drive away, knowing I'll probably never see her again. My body was fatigued from everything, so I stayed home from work for a few days claiming to be sick. I lay on the couch gazing at the walls and contemplating my connection with Oliver in a manner I'd never done before. I replayed events from the last 4 years and noticed patterns I'd missed. Sometimes he'd zone out when we were together, like his mind was elsewhere. How he never communicated his deepest sentiments about anything, simply job or movies. I planned our future and talked about what we wanted, while he merely nodded and didn't contribute. I told myself he needed time to trust again since Sophie hurt him. But being alone in the flat, I thought it may be easier than trauma. Maybe he didn't want to be there for me in the manner I needed him. I opened my phone to text Oliver. I wrote that Sophie was leaving town forever and we needed one last chat about who we were and what we wanted. I sent before overthinking. He said affirmatively, asking when and where, in less than a minute. I invited him to the flat tomorrow afternoon. I put my phone down after he said, okay, and felt strangely relaxed. To relieve my hands, I cleaned the flat the next day. When Oliver knocked, I opened the door and found him looking frightened and fatigued. He entered and surveyed the space like a newcomer. Once we were together, the apartment seemed different, not like our house, more like a place where something happened. We were on opposite ends of the sofa with a large expanse that felt bigger than actual distance. Oliver spoke first, stating he'd been thinking a lot for weeks. He admits to treating me unfairly from the start. He claims he started dating me before recovering from Sophie. He loved me. But he wasn't sure I deserved it. His voice cracked as he stated that last sentence, and I could see he was struggling to confess it. Hearing his honesty made my chest tighten, but I liked it. I told him I'd been thinking too. And I realized something crucial. I stated I should pick myself instead of waiting for him. I told him I deserved someone who knew me from the start and didn't need to lose someone else to appreciate us. I saw Oliver's eyes well up, but he nodded slowly because he knew I was right. After a moment of silence, we started discussing the practical matters we'd been avoiding. Over 4 years, we'd jumbled our apartment contract, shared furnishings, and other details. Oliver offered to leave and find a new apartment so I could stay. I was surprised he was so giving, but sorry we had to split our lives. We decided to spend a few days to finalize everything before contacting the landlord. Emily drove up to assist me package Oliver's last items that weekend. She provided garbage bags, packing tape, and her no-nonsense approach, which I needed. We removed clothing and shoes from his closet, then took his amenities and electric razor from the counter. Emily said she was proud of me for leaving instead of settling for someone who just wanted me half-heartedly. I found Oliver's promise ring at the door when we were cleaning out a bedroom drawer. I lingered over it in the light. I refused to retain it when Emily requested and put it in the box with his other items. My desire for that ring made me believe in a future that was never true. The following Monday, I contacted my insurance company's therapist hotline to make a same-week appointment. I completed mental health history form in a modest downtown office waiting area. The therapist called me back, and I sat on her sofa and explained everything about Oliver and Sophie and how I'd lost a relationship and a friendship in one tangled mess. She listened without interrupting and then asked questions that changed my perspective. She showed me during the following several sessions that I was attempting to win Oliver's love by being flawless and helpful, whereas true love doesn't take ongoing proving. She stated I'd changed myself to fit his needs instead of being myself and seeing whether that was enough. Though difficult because they forced me to examine my tendencies, the sessions were beneficial in unexpected ways. Oliver texted 2 weeks later that he'd found an apartment across town and was ready to relocate. We exchanged keys and separated everything we mingled at my house. He appeared lighter to me, like he was finally confronting reality instead of running from it. He informed me he was seeing a therapist to get through his abandonment issues and relationship inattention. Moving his things into his car required many trips up and down the stairs. He returned the extra key I gave him years earlier after I gave him his apartment key. We lingered in the parking lot, unsure how to say farewell. After thanking everyone, he went in his car. I watched him drive away and walked upstairs to my own flat. After a month, I was used to living alone, having the bed to myself, and not having to arrange my schedule. I received a message request from Rachel Turner while browsing social media one afternoon. I accepted it and saw Sophie's younger sister, whom I'd only seen a few times in college. Her reply thanked me for being polite to Sophie in their last discussion before she left town. Sophie was doing well in her new place, building a life for herself, Rachel wrote. Sophie occasionally mentioned how I handled everything with more grace than she deserved. Rachel quickly emailed to ask if I wanted to get lunch after I said I was pleased Sophie was okay. We arranged to meet the next weekend. Rachel looked like Sophie when we met at a casual cafe near my flat, which surprised me. She told me more about Sophie's mom's sickness after we ordered lunch. Sophie said their family fell apart as their dad emotionally shut down, and Sophie carried everything. Rachel stated she was too young to help and has felt guilty about it ever since seeing her sister die for their mom. She described how their dad denied aid and insisted he could manage it when he couldn't. Rachel lowered her voice when she mentioned visiting the house and witnessing how horrible things had gotten. How their mom no longer recognized anyone, and their dad was barely coping. Hearing her changed my perspective on Sophie's decisions. Recognizing her terrible predicament, but not dismissing her decision's agony. Rachel pondered what might have happened if their family had been more honest about needing help. If their dad hadn't insisted on keeping it quiet. Rachel hugged me goodbye after lunch, thanking me again for meeting her. I drove home thinking about how difficult people's lives are, and how you never know what they're carrying. I spent the next week perfecting a large advertising pitch for a new client, staying up late most nights. Helen stopped by the doorway when I was studying slides in the conference room. After looking at me, she stated I seemed lighter. She entered and sat across from me after I inquired what she meant. She said I'd been standing taller and not hunching my shoulders to save room. I missed it, but she was correct. Somehow, I changed in recent weeks. Helen thought I'd quit carrying others' weight. Hearing her say that made me understand it had occurred. Oliver's grief, Sophie's shame, and my worry of not being enough were with me. All of it was eventually taken down. Sitting in that meeting room, I felt liberated. How much energy I'd wasted on things I wasn't responsible for. 3 months after Oliver left, a deleted but recognizable number texted me. He wanted to meet for coffee to speak as friends, not to reunite. I pondered the message for a while, wondering if I was ready. Part of me wanted to dismiss it and go on. Part of him wanted closure, to see whether he'd changed, or if this was simply another attempt to assuage his guilt. We met at a downtown coffee shop on Saturday morning after I texted yes. He was sitting at a corner table when I arrived, calmer and more content than I remembered, not fidgeting or checking his phone every few seconds. After ordering beverages and sitting down, we had an awkward moment where neither of us knew how to start. His final message thanked me for meeting him and stated he'd been wanting to contact me for weeks, but wasn't sure whether I'd respond. Oliver started telling me about his treatment, how his counselor was forcing him to face why he was always terrified of being alone. He stated he realized he went from his broken engagement to supporting me, then from my support to dating me without ever confronting his concerns. He confessed to exploiting relationships to avoid face his fear of abandonment by focusing on others' needs. He looked me in the eyes and thanked me for forcing him to face his habits instead of enabling them like everyone else. I was astonished to hear Oliver take responsibility since I expected him to make excuses or blame circumstances. In response to my question, he said he hadn't spoken to Sophie. He claimed he valued her decision to start again, and was attempting to do the same. He told me he'd always have confused feelings for her and that you can't stop loving someone who meant so much to you. But he started to see that the connection wasn't healthy. His statements surprised me since they showed maturity I didn't anticipate. Oliver moved in his seat and apologized for not being my partner, and for making me his emotional support instead of his equal. He stated he lent on me when he was broken and remained leaning afterward. Not fair to any of us. He wished I'd meet someone who instinctively selects me first, since I deserve that. He spoke what I needed to hear months ago, and my throat tightened. I thanked him for the apology and hoped he'd find peace with himself before dating again, since the next person didn't deserve to be his crutch either. After a moment of quiet, he asked whether I recalled the weekend we traveled to the shore and were trapped in that storm. I grinned at how we were caught in this little hotel and played cards for hours as rain beat on the windows. I discovered that I didn't regret our relationship, even if it ended horribly, as we talked about other nice memories. Oliver taught me what I didn't want in a companion. Even if it hurt, being someone's second choice was valuable. I helped him confront his underlying trauma instead of avoiding it. It was all right for partnerships to serve a purpose, even if they didn't endure forever. 3 months after things broke apart, I went to my coworker's party and met Liam, her husband's coworker. After an hour of aimless chatter in the kitchen, he invited me to supper. I agreed even though I wasn't ready, and we planned for the next week. The evening was relaxed, dinner at an Italian restaurant near my flat and easy chat. I was most surprised by how different it felt to be with someone who asked me questions and listened instead of talking. Liam asked about my family, interests and employment. He was fascinated when I told him about my sister and my art revival. I wasn't ready for anything serious, but it felt nice to recall other guys would want me instead of treating me like a consolation prize. The next weekend, Emily visited, and we spent Saturday morning reorganizing my apartment furnishings and hanging my paintings. She continued saying I was better living alone and more like myself before dating Oliver. I asked her what she meant, and she said I'd been doing things I stopped doing with him, like going to evening concerts, staying up late reading, and taking strange art classes. She said I'd been bending myself to his wants without recognizing it. We ordered takeaway and ate pad thai from the containers on my couch. I was grateful to my sister for sticking with me through this turmoil. The next Tuesday, I almost hit Max in the fruit department while shopping for dinner. We laughed and he inquired how I was doing, then spoke by the apples. Max informed me Oliver was doing well and seemed healthier than he has in years since he was focused on design and treatment. I remember Max saying he was glad I was strong enough to walk away when Oliver couldn't make a decision because it helped him to grow up and deal with his difficulties. He said losing me woke Oliver up from his life of avoiding harsh things. After saying goodbye, I moved my cart toward the checkout, thinking how bizarre it was that my suffering had changed someone else. At my therapy appointment that week, I discussed how I was beginning to accept the complicated truth that my ending may harm me, but was the correct option. My therapist agreed and added, "That's emotional maturity, being able to hold both truths at once without trying to make it simpler than it is." She said many people struggle with this, wanting to make their ex all nice or all horrible. Real life is more difficult. Oliver harmed me terribly, yet I saw he was traumatized. I might be sorry about leaving the relationship, yet know I deserved better. After that therapy office, I was proud of my progress after a few months. From the sobbing person at her door to someone who could see clearly and honestly. The next week, my supervisor summoned me into her office and said that I would be promoted to senior account manager, with a huge rise and greater responsibilities. I left the meeting feeling like I could breathe for the first time in months. Helen saw me at my work later and demanded we celebrate that night. She ordered 2 costly glasses at this downtown wine bar. After studying me for months, she glanced at me across the table and stated I'd changed entirely. She said I was continually shrinking, quieting, and lowering my expectations when I started dating Oliver. But now I took up space without apology. She claimed I now speak out in meetings when I inquired what she meant. I limit troublesome clientele. I stopped apologizing for others' mistakes. Helen lifted her glass and said she was proud of me for choosing myself when it would have been easy to settle. Sitting there, I realized she'd become more than a colleague who delivered harsh counsel. She was my mentor and friend who helped me recognize my value when I couldn't. 4 months after things went apart, I leased a smaller apartment across town. The house was mine with my name on the paperwork, which felt meaningful. Emily drove up that weekend to help me decorate and move in. On Saturday, we painted one wall a deep blue I'd always liked, but Oliver claimed was too dark. Emily helped me display my late-night paintings in the living room. Instead of settling for a neutral couch, I chose one I loved at furniture stores. Emily kept saying the flat was different from the one I lived with Oliver, like it had my individuality instead of being generic. Since my table hadn't arrived, we ate pizza from the box on the floor. She said I looked lighter, like when I started dating Oliver. I glanced around at my blue wall, paintings and furnishings and realized this was the first place wholly mine in years. I spotted Sophie's post on social media about creating a support group for Alzheimer's caregivers in her new location one evening while scrolling through my phone. She received hundreds of thanks and questions on the post. I pondered it, having strange sensations. I was still wounded by all that occurred, but I was glad she was helping others. I wrote her a quick note that I was delighted she was doing well, and that her support group will benefit many families. She replied within an hour to thank me for my generosity after everything. Not saying anything else seemed like the proper ending for where we were. Oliver was across the room at a mutual friend's birthday celebration a few weeks later. First my stomach leaped, but then I realized I wasn't terrified or furious, just indifferent. He stopped by and we spoke about our lives. He excitedly described a startup branding project he was working on. He learned about my promotion and new flat. He appeared thrilled for me, and I was shocked I liked his project. Though distant, we were cordial, which fit where we were at the time. The chat lasted about 5 minutes until we organically moved around the party, but it wasn't uncomfortable or forced. A couple that split up. Liam and I had our second date at an Italian restaurant the following weekend. The chat moved beyond job and interests this time. I told him everything about Oliver and Sophie when he inquired about my former relationships without making myself the victim or hero. I recounted what happened and what I learnt. Liam recounted his difficult relationship with a cheating ex and how long it took him to trust again. I appreciated that we could be honest about our pasts without pretending we were perfect or over everything. He didn't modify my story or suggest changes. He listened, nodded, and said he understood my options. After 5 months, Emily inquired if I'd seen Oliver's recent social media posts during one of our weekly calls. I realized I hadn't checked his profile in weeks or months. I informed her and she chuckled, saying that was big development from the person who checked his accounts numerous times a day. She was right. I stopped caring what he was doing, with whom, or happy. I concentrated on my life and progress for the first time in years. We chuckled at how far I'd come since the first night I arrived to her apartment weeping and checking my phone. Helen grabbed me aside one afternoon at work and said she'd observed something. Faye, a younger coworker going through a horrible breakup, was my lunch buddy. Helen said she overheard me telling Faye the same honest counsel she'd given me months before about not settling for crumbs and valuing herself. I hadn't considered it, but she was correct. Sharing the insight that helped me see clearly while I was drowning in uncertainty. It was satisfying to assist someone avoid my blunders by sharing my sad experience. Liam took me to a great taco eatery on our third date. After that, we strolled around the area looking at old houses. He kissed me goodnight as he guided me to my car. I didn't compare it to kissing Oliver or doubt my readiness or decision. At that time, someone seemed really interested in knowing me. We planned to hike the next weekend, and I was thrilled to get to know him more rather than nervous. 6 months after debating whether to allow Oliver in, I was calling Emily about holiday preparations from my own apartment. She directly asked me whether I was pleased. And I contemplated it. Yes. But not in a fairy tale sense. It was a calm, grounded happiness. It would have been easy to pick him. That decision brought me to my real life. Rachel's handwritten note arrived on Tuesday in a pale blue envelope. She wrote that Sophie wanted me to know her support group had benefited scores of Alzheimer's families and she'd found meaning in her new life. In her bottom message, Rachel thanked me for being polite to her sister when I had every reason not to. I read it twice and magnetized it on my fridge. It reminded me that people are complicated and messy, and sometimes they hurt you without trying to, but grace is always worth providing, even when it's hard. I received a text from an unknown number while putting lights in my apartment around the holidays. Before seeing the message, I almost erased it. Oliver requesting contact, inform me of his well-being. Single for 6 months, focused on myself. I appreciate our time together. After staring at it, I typed that I was glad he was finding peace. Additional mails were exchanged. Simple, courteous life updates. The talk naturally ended, and we went our own ways. After hanging the lights, I felt peaceful. No anger, no grief, simply acceptance that we were each going our own ways. After 2 months with Liam, I noticed how different everything seemed. Always texted me in the morning. He planned a week ahead. He phoned when he said he would. I commented in therapy how unusual it felt to be with someone so constant. My therapist grinned. She noted that I was now experiencing being someone's first choice, not their backup or comfort zone. Her remarks hit me hard because she was right. I always felt like I was battling with a ghost to be chosen by Oliver. I had nothing to prove with Liam. No questions, no worries. He simply showed up. While eating at an Italian restaurant, Liam asked me what I wanted in a relationship. The question surprised me because most guys don't ask that. I thought about it and set my fork down before replying honestly. I told him I needed someone who selects me without hesitation, shows up regularly, has worked to be emotionally open, and doesn't make me worry whether I'm enough. Liam grinned and stated he shared your desire to build something great together. I grinned and was cautiously sure we were. 7 months after everything changed, I was enjoying coffee in my apartment on a Saturday morning and admiring my new surroundings. My advancement at work increased my compensation and responsibilities. Bi-weekly treatment kept me grounded. My bond with Helen, who became a mentor, and Rachel, who we had lunch with to chat about her sister and life, grew. Liam, my boyfriend, treated me the way I deserved but never understood. Oliver taught me relationship pitfalls. I learned to choose myself even when it was hard and terrifying by leaving him. Life wasn't perfect and I still had lonely, uneasy days. It was my apartment, options, future.